Well, good afternoon. We're here in, hello, Mr. Balgeri. How are you? Nice that you joined us. We're ready to discuss chapters 13, 14, and 15 tonight. I normally try to get chapter 16 in, but I'm not going to try to force that tonight. So we'll do chapter 16 next week. Chapter 13, marketing, developing plans to help buyers buy, which is the era that we're in today. We'll go through that shortly. Then we'll move to chapter 14, which is developing prices and good for goods and services. And finally, chapter 15, distributing products. So let's look at our learning objectives for chapter 13. Sorry, I got that messed up there. Define marketing and apply the marketing concept to both profit and nonprofit organizations. Describe the 4 P's of marketing. Summarize the marketing research process. Learn how marketers use environmental scanning to learn about the changes in the marketing environment. Explain how marketers apply the tools of market segmentation, relationship marketing, and the study of consumer behavior. And then finally, we'll talk about comparing the business-to-business market and the consumer market. I'm sorry. And of course, we'll talk a little bit more about the business-to-business market and the consumer market as we move through the chapters. I have a question here that's posed, and what is marketing? And more or less, as the slide says, it's all the things that you do to attract a customer or customers. And so you're making an exchange of information, and hopefully you're exchanging the proper information so that the customer will make a purchase from you. He will exchange his or her money. Now, you're also, the other thing that is very interesting here, and I think we really have to pay attention to, is that you're offering the customer, or consumer if you prefer, value. Not only are you offering him or her a product or a service, but you're offering value that goes along with that. And that is very important, because if you're not offering value to a customer, he or she is not going to make that exchange. So we need to really think about making sure that we're offering value. Now, okay, you can say, yeah, we're going to talk about something called convenience goods later in this chapter. And that's very, very important. What's the value of a convenience good? Well, the value of a convenience good is that it's convenient. It's there. It's any place somebody wants to go get it. They don't have to do anything special to try to find a gallon of milk or a loaf of bread or something of that nature. So that's the value of that particular thing. It's where it's located. A loaf of bread's a loaf of bread's a loaf of bread. Now, yeah, you can get some, I'm going to use the term designer breads that are better and so on and so forth. And hopefully we're going to have some bread that's better than the traditional American bread that you can buy at the store. But a loaf of bread, buying it in and of itself, really is not much different from another loaf of bread, assuming they're both the same, both rye breads or wheat breads or regular bread. So there has to be value, and if there is not value, then customer's not going to be interested. Helping buyers buy, we do there's a number of ways to do that, and I'm not going to go through this thing, but one of the things we found today is that, and I don't know, I know how prevalent they are, I don't know how successful they always are, with the use of social media and blogs and things of that nature to keep your product in front of the people you're trying to attract to buy. marketing has gone through a number of, as the text refers to, eras. Production era, selling era, marketing concept era, and customer relationship era. And we're going to talk a little bit about these so we have some idea of the history that we have gone through in various eras of marketing. And what you should see, and I think you will see and understand, is that in days gone by, marketing was a lot different than what we see today. In this production era, the philosophy was produce whatever you can because the market is limitless. Now, that may have been a thought process at one time, but it's no longer a thought process today, or at least I don't think it is. And one reason it shouldn't be is there's a finite number of people that are interested in your product and a finite number of people to which you can sell the product. We only have X number of people on this planet. Now, somebody's going to argue with me and say, well, we have too many. I'm not going there. What I'm saying is that if there are 7 billion people on this planet as of today, you can only sell 7 billion pieces of your product, assuming that it is something that's fairly indestructible and stays around for a while. So notice that after we got away from this, what was known as mass production, we turned to what was known as persuasion. So let's look at that. Marketing concepts. And by the way, unfortunately, these slides, this particular slide, we're moving into a part of the area that we're going to talk about, customer relationship marketing. Selling era is exactly what it said. You went ahead and sold people. Then we had the marketing concept era, which is what we have here. We have three keys here. Look at this as a three-legged stool, if you will. Customer orientation, service orientation, and then profit orientation. Well, obviously, these are all fairly well understood. You want to find out what the customer what the customer wants. Then you're going to make sure that you're giving the customer the service that he or needs before, during, and after the sale. And then obviously you have to think about making a profit, because if you don't make one, you won't be in business very long. So we now have moved to what is known as the customer relationship era, customer relationship management. But as the text mentions, customer relationship era management is doing what you're supposed to do in this whole thing. And the object here in the first bullet is finding out as much about your customers as you possibly can. Now, when we say customers, I want you to think of a segment of the population to which a company is trying to market its product. And the reason I say that is because it's a lot easier, to find out what a segment of the population is interested in than it is for the general population. Not to say you can't do that, but it's a little easier to do the way I'm speaking. Now, once you've found out about that, then you want to do things that you're going to not only meet a customer's expectations, you're going to try to exceed them. Notice the next thing down here. You're trying to build a long-term relationship with that customer so he or she, or he's and she's, will continue to come back and come back and come back and come back and purchase your products. This just mentions down there Priceline and Travelocity. Try to find out as much about their customers as they possibly can. And what I would tell you is when we take trips of some what I want to say length degree, where it's going to be something that's not just going down the street or something like that. My wife usually plans these, and she uses one of these outfits down here, and they continually send us email and talk about things that they think we would be interested in, et cetera. So it's something that's very important for people to go. And this just brings us back to digital technology. And notice the customer's demand are expected to rise in now, like I want it now, can I do this for me, personalized experiences, etc. There's a little bit more here. And notice this last thing. Customers don't want this to be hard. They want it to be easy, and they want it to be something that can be done quickly as possible. Now, this particular slide talks about keeping customers and the costs and things of that nature. And I'm not going to go through everything that's on this list. You can look at that for yourself. But I think there are a couple of keys here. Number one is to listen. Listen to what the customer is saying to you and act upon what he or she is saying. Now, I'm speaking here of you're dealing with just one customer instead of multiple. But that extends across the same spectrum, or wider spectrum, I guess is a better way to put that. And then I think that the next thing on here, none of these are any more important than the other, but just to show appreciation and genuinely let the customer know that you appreciate his or her business and that you look forward to working with them in the future, future sales, future products, whatever. This is just talking here about sustainability and something that Campbell Soup does. It buys peaches from local New Jersey farmers that can't be sold for various and sundry reasons, and then manufactures peach salsa, is what it says here, at no cost, and donates it to the local food bank. This particular slide talks about nonprofits and how they use marketing. Nonprofits obviously must market. They rely on their donors to stay in business, and to help them do the things that they want to do. And these are just some of the tactics that they use. I'm not going to go through that a whole lot because I don't think we're not going to focus on that too much in the rest of the chapter, so I'm not going to go through it. And then here's some of the strategies that they do. Marketing helps them determine goals and objectives, and long-term marketing and helps with strategic planning, etc. We are now going to turn to the 4 P's of marketing. It's the marketing mix. And the 4 P's are shown here fairly well. And they're shown a little bit differently here than you might expect to see them. You can see this in figure 13.2 at the top of page 367 in your text. Pretty simple. Product, price, place, and promotion. Developing a product is really something that's very difficult to do in a way, and in some cases it's rather easy. I thought the lead-in story about the gentleman who founded For Us By Us was very interesting, and how he was able to get it caught on. Notice that he did not develop something that was a need. He developed something that was a want, and he, in some respects, did test market it. I don't think he probably did traditional test marketing in the way we thought of. And then he did develop a brand name, For Us By Us, FUBU. And so it really did differentiate his product or products from those of others, even though many of them were the same. these are the things that go into placing a product. And it also goes into pricing a product. And we have to find out what our competitors are selling their product for, how much it costs us, what it costs us in distribution, what kind of pricing strategy do you have, and then middlemen. And we're going to talk about middlemen in chapter 15. So I'm not going to discuss middlemen here. And these are the things that we do to get the product out in front of people, how we promote it. Promotion is discussed pretty much in chapter 16, so we're not going to talk about that here as well. This particular slide that talks about perfect promotion. And I don't know that there is such a thing. I suppose it could be. There's a lot of things we think in here. You want your product to make your product built to love. Well, if it's an inanimate object, you can't love that because it takes another animate object to reciprocate with love. But you certainly want it to be something that people can resonate with. They can. It's something that they want. Motion-laden advertising, things of that nature. Good salespeople with confidence, etc. Showing interest goes back to some of the things we talked about before, and being respectful and enthusiastic, and of course, obviously, as well, being truthful. This talks about problems with the web when people have some difficulties. I don't want to spend a lot of time here, but what it simply says is make your message clear, make it readable, and make your site navigable so people can get through it, and stay away from being a copycat, because people don't like that, and they can certainly see that. One of the things that we have to do in any type of trying to sell a product, any type of marketing, is to, excuse me, my slide went back where I don't want it to go. Let me get out of that. Is to do the appropriate amount of research to find out something about the market in which we're trying to do business. Every market has challenges and opportunities. So we need to find the information that's going to help us unlock the secret, if you will, to being able to penetrate a particular market. And remember, your research should, while it is going to be across the board, you're going to do primary research and maybe some secondary research, etc. You're trying to unlock what is there, or trying to find the key to get in. And you're always looking for two things. You're looking for something that customers either need or something that they want, and those needs or wants are not being satisfied currently. So you begin the research by defining what you're trying to do, defining the problem, and also saying, okay, what is the situation as we face it today? And you're going to collect the research data, and you're going to analyze the data. What does the data mean? And then you're going to choose, this is like in the decision-making process, you're going to choose the best alternative, normally speaking, the alternative that gives you the greatest payback, and you're going to implement it, but you're also going to evaluate it to make sure that after you're through with it, you've done the implementation, that you're going to be satisfied with what you found, what you had to say, etc. Thank you for attending, Mr. Bilgeri. I hope you can come back. If not, we'll continue on without you. So alternatives, what information do we need? How much more information should be gathered? And then what we're also going to do is we're going to break this down into primary and secondary data. We're going to talk about secondary data first, then we'll get to primary data. Secondary data is simply information that you can get that someone else has already done that doesn't going to cost you a lot of time or a lot of effort. We find these things in things like telephone books, information that's at the public library, information that's been gotten by the government for various and sundry things, various and sundry reasons, that is available to the public. You may have to pay for it, but it's available to the public. Now, it says here, no expense and usually is easily accessible. And I say to you that that is correct, but there are times when you get data from the government or a government, they're going to charge you for maybe the reproduction, maybe for a clerk's time or something of that nature. But you can go to the public library for the most part and get a lot of this information at no charge, and that is absolutely correct. I'm not saying that. Don't mean to indicate to you that that slide is not correct. It's just understand that sometimes you may have to pay for that information. Now, it also says here that you're not going to get all the information you want. And why are you not going to get all the information you want? Well, you're not going to get all the information you want because, pardon me, this has been compiled by people, and it doesn't give you someone's emotion, and it doesn't give you someone's feeling, or someone's feelings. So what you have here is, just use a term, is like raw material. So you got a lot of information here. Yes, you can make heads or tails out of it. It's not that difficult, but it only gives you that stuff. And look at it as in numbers. And numbers, yeah, they'll tell a story, but they won't tell all the story that you want. So that's why you need to get primary data. And primary data, of course, is something that is, now I'm not going to tell you it's more reliable, but it's something that you've gotten yourself. Okay, primary data. Notice what it says here at the beginning. Primary data is in-depth information. It's been given to you, or you have obtained it through personal exchange in some fashion. Now, there's a lot of ways to gather primary data, and there are the ways to gather it. Telephone interviews. A lot of people don't like to do those. And what's the problem with telephone interviews today? There are fewer and fewer and fewer people that have landlines. And it's more expensive for anyone to do any type of research in trying to call cell phones. Just to digress, this has been a problem with polling numbers. Because the polling numbers, you're not getting a wide spectrum of people. You're only getting people that own landlines. And as that number decreases, then the propensity of the poll numbers to be accurate are probably somewhat not very good. Somebody used talking about polling. I heard this on NPR the other day. Somebody used an example of the Kentucky governor's race. Now, I bring this up a couple of reasons. Number one, I heard this, but number two, I'm a Kentuckian. And I talked about that the polling numbers before the general election, which was just held last November, showed the Democrat, Jack Conway, with a 5-point lead. And in fact, the Republican, Matt Bevin, who won the election by 9 points. So what that says to you is that the polling data was suspect. Now, it doesn't mean to say that the data they presented was inaccurate. It just wasn't complete because they weren't getting the spectrum that they needed. So I know I digressed a little bit but that's something that you wanted to know. That I thought you should know about that. Now, this talks about focus groups, and this is a great way to get information. What I would say to you is this: if you're going to use a focus group, you have to have somebody who knows how to conduct focus group interviews, for lack of a better term, because this particular person asks a question and then probes more deeply for other questions. It'd be much different. You get much different answers than if you use telephone survey, a mail survey, or something of that nature. Well, once you've gotten the information, you have to analyze it, plan your strategy, and then make recommendations. And then before you even do anything else, you have to go back and look at what you've done and say, okay, do I need to do something else? Have I gotten enough information? So it's one of those things that you need to do. And research, by the way, as far as I'm concerned, when it comes to product and many other types of research, really never ends. Almost every research document that I have ever seen will have something at the end that says questions for further research. Or the research, this particular research was not prepared to answer certain questions. Or this research was limited in scope, and other things need to be considered. So that's something that you're almost always going to find. Does that mean that the research was faulty or the researchers didn't do a good job? No, it doesn't. We have to remember that there's a limited amount of time we have and a limited amount of resources that we can do to do any type of research. And therefore, we're always going to probably have something that's rather incomplete. Now, just some of the things on this slide here, key benefits of marketing research, are really self-explanatory, and I'm not going to go through all these because you can look at them yourselves and determine as you want to determine what you think is best and what you think is needed or not needed, etc. But again, what you're doing with this research is you're trying to find out what customers want, what they need, what's available. Is what's available meeting those needs and wants? How effective is our competitors' marketing strategy? How effective is ours? And there are other things that you can go through, but you need to look at all these things and then decide, why were we successful or why weren't we? Now this talks about ways to find out what consumers want, and we can do that from a number of ways. Your surveys. Sometimes you walk in a department store. More often than I see that you walk into something like a supermarket, and somebody will be there asking questions. And of course, you can find those in any other ways, any other areas as well as that goes. Listen to what your competition's customers have to say. Ask your sales force what's going on. I mean, they're the people with their ears to the ground, or hopefully they have their ears to the ground, so they ought to be able to tell you. And those things are all important. And this information, by the way, is going to be collected over a period of time, and reevaluated, etc. We need to scan the marketing environment or scan the environmental scanning, help us figure out what affects marketing success. This is what's involved. Excuse me, I went too far with my slide. I beg your pardon. And these are the things that are involved: global factors, technological factors, socio-cultural, competitive. We'll talk about some of these as we go through the line, down the line here. This is just talking about something about in China, and I'm really not going to talk too much more about this, but notice that China is changing its policy of one child only. Whether that's good, bad, or indifferent, that's for China to decide. But some things are more expensive than they should be, and so companies are doing things to alleviate that, and that's part of their marketing strategy. Now, this is a slide that just tells us about the different environmental scanning things that we have to do. Notice the customer is placed in the center, and we have the 4 Ps in the marketing mix, and things we have to be concerned about as we try to market product. This particular slide talks about the ABCs of marketing, and I don't really think here that there's anything that should shock anybody. Customer focus, and I think the one that is probably as important as customer focus is to evaluate, if you will, analyze what your company does against a leader in the field, known as benchmarking. Benchmark here. Work to continually improve your performance. And this is something that is very important. And last, of course, as we've talked about, empowering employees. We have 2 different markets. We talk about markets in a number of different ways, in a number of different fashions. We have 2 different markets that people sell to, or companies sell to. One's a consumer market, that's us, that we buy goods and services as end users. For the most part, we are not going to buy a gallon of milk and take that gallon of milk down to the street corner and resell it. I'm not going to say that doesn't happen, but for the most part, it doesn't. Business to business, on the other hand, made up of organizations and institutions and things like that, that in some cases, pardon me, will buy product and then use that product and resell that product like a wholesaler will, or they may use it in their own for their own business, etc. So notice down here, use in production or to sell, rent, or supply to others. So that market is much different than the consumer market, and we will get to the differentiation between those two in not too long a period of time. This is marketing to consumers. We'll talk a little bit more about that as we did, as we have before. Do a couple of things in marketing to consumers a little differently than we do in marketing to businesses. Pardon me. One is that we have market segmentation. Notice what that does. That divides the larger market into smaller segments, and each of these segments have what is known there as similar characteristics. Could be age, could be income, could be ethnicity, could be something else. And then the target market, or target markets, is selecting the segments that we can serve most profitably. And there's other segments we won't necessarily not market to them, but that's not going to be our target. We're going to go after the area. Sometimes this is also called niche marketing. We're going to go after the area that's going to give us the biggest return for our effort, biggest bang for the buck. We also have things called demographic segmentation. Well, let me get up here. Geographic segmentation. Obviously, that's what needs no further explanation. The demographic segmentation, that's going back to what I was talking about before in the marketing part, but also giving some additional information. And then psychographic. Notice what this is. This is dividing them by values, attitudes, etc. I'll also have a couple of others. Benefit segmentation. And notice here it says by product benefits that the customer prefers. And then finally, volume. And we don't need to discuss volume any more than what we already have. This slide may not be seen real well, but just gives you some idea of different types of segments. You can see this slide excuse me, I beg your pardon. I looked at the wrong page to give you a copy of the slide. Now you can see this at figure 13.6 toward the middle and bottom of page 376. And you can see it much better in the text than you can see it here. Even if I blow it up, you won't see it that well. And then psychographic gives you some idea here of that. Now, this is what I was talking about before, niche marketing. And this is identifying what's known as a small but profitable market segment. And then you're going to design products to meet that, or go into that with a new product and hopefully do that. One-to-one marketing, I'm not going to get into this because that's pretty self-explanatory. We can figure that out and what that does for us. Mass marketing, pretty simple. We're developing a product or products that's going to appeal to the greatest number of people. And then relationship marketing goes back to what we talked about early on when we started this conversation, and that is actually getting in and finding out what your customer wants, and then developing a product. Probably better to say customer base wants, and then developing a product to meet what they're looking for. Notice custom-made goods and services for customers. Keys to successful relationship marketing. We kind of touched on this before. A couple of things here that I like to talk about, and I'm not going to go over all of them, but reliable service, trust, honesty, and ethical behavior. And then finally, the one I have talked about before, showing you care. That's appreciation. And that's a genuine thing, and you can't fake that. All right. Excuse me. Steps in the consumer decision-making process. This is not much different than in the decision-making process, by the way. Recognize you have something that needs to be satisfied. You're going to search for information and comparing products, whatever, which is part of the next one, evaluating alternatives. You're going to make a decision to buy or not buy. And then you're going to evaluate whether or not you made a wise decision. This is just turning negatives into positives. Online reviews are really very difficult, and one of the reasons they're difficult is because the online reviewer does not have to reveal his or her name. And so you don't always know what's being said, and you don't know if that comment is being driven by something other than what the person says. And notice also here that the review could be because of the experience somebody had and not about the product. This is key factors in consumer decision making. I really don't know how much culture plays in this, but I assume that it does. Certainly, it comes to things with wearing apparel. I can certainly not necessarily attest to that, but we all can think of that. These are challenges in marketing, common issues. Marketing can be challenging for both business to consumer and business to business. And here are some of the challenges that they face. Social media, again, is mentioned in here. Converting leads to customers. I would say converting leads to purchasers as opposed to customers. Business to business market. And we know who these are. You may notice that a lot of people we know here, manufacturers, wholesalers, retailers, institutions like hospitals, etc., and of course the government. And there's the difference between the business to business market and the consumer market. You can see this on page 381 at the top, figure 13.7. And we will do some discussing of how people approach the business to business and business to consumer markets a little bit later. And I'm not going to spend any time on that at the present. So we have finished chapter 13, which is marketing helping buyers buy. It is 5:13. Take a 3-minute break and come back and discuss developing and pricing goods and services. So please come back at 5:16. Thank you. You have any questions?
I have one.
Okay.
Can you hear me okay, or should I put on a headset?
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay. I have watched attended the lecture in both a Macintosh and a Windows environment.
Okay.
And it's the same in both. I can't always see all of the slides.
Yeah.
And I wonder, are those available on the class site somewhere that I can review them, for outline purposes?
Are they available? And where did you ask me? Are they available?
At the class site, Business 101. You go in and where we have all of our assignments.
Yeah.
It's just that they don't. In the limited view that's here, they don't always scroll all the way up, so I can see, say, the top 2 bullets, but I can't see what's on the bottom. And
yeah.
I can't obviously control how to scroll it.
I can't. I try to make sure that I do scroll out all the way up, so that you can see those. I try to make sure that I do. I may not do it as well as I ought to.
Okay.
When you go to the lectures, to the recorded lecture, do you see the entire slide there?
No, I see a recording of what was broadcast live.
Okay.
So,
yeah.
And sometimes there may not be any bullets at the bottom of the page. I don't know because I can't see it.
Yeah.
Maybe I'm looking at everything that's there.
Okay. What I'll try to do to make sure that I do that is to make sure that I have all the bullets so you can see them. And I understand.
Okay.
Yeah, I understand what you said about you can't see those on the recorded lecture because it's only going to show what the camera has picked up. And probably even if we do all the bullets, it's not going to show them all. But I'll try to make sure that we do have all the bullets visible to you so you can see them. And let me know if I move too fast. Sometimes I tend to do that. So And thank you for bringing
Okay.
that up to make sure we get those on. Okay, so
Thank you.
yeah, you're welcome. We are at 5:16, and unfortunately, I now have one of these. Since you brought that up, I now have one of these. I don't think I'm going to be able to move the slides up. Yeah, maybe I can too. We'll see. I'll try to do that. Okay.
All right.
Sometimes, and I apologize for that. I can only give you what it gives me, and sometimes it doesn't give me what I think it ought to. And by the time I realize that I have to play around with it, it's entirely too late, so I can't do much for it. Anyway, we're now developing and pricing goods and services, and we're going to talk here about, this is one that I have, and I can't seem to move these slides at all. All right, so there is a bullet you can't see, and it is describe a total product offer. Then identify the various kinds of consumer and industrial goods. Summarize the functions of packaging. Contrast brand name, and trademark, and show the value of brand equity. And then again, there's one bullet you can't see. And as I said, well, wait a minute. I'm going to try something different. There we go. I just moved the slide up. So you should be able to see all these now. Explain the steps in the new product development process. Pardon me. Describe the product life cycle, and then finally identify various pricing objectives and strategies. All right. This is from a definition from the American Marketing Association. Notice what it says here. It says that value is the foundation of marketing. So that's just saying that the individuals have a perceived value of what they're purchasing. And without going into a lot of explanation, the definition of value is offering a customer, no matter who the customer is or what kind of customer he or she is, good quality at a fair price. Now, some people would say you want to have great quality or superior quality or excellent quality, and I'm not going to quibble with those adjectives. But you want to give them quality. And let's take that variable out, the good, the great, the excellent, etc., and say value at a fair price. Then it is, and this is to my estimation, it is the purchaser who places that adjective on the value. And the reason I say that is because if the purchaser likes what he or she sees, they're going to pay what they consider to be the fair price. And if there's no haggling that goes on, then we can consider that value to be what the customer wants. If we see that value going down in the perception of the customer, he or she may not be willing to pay any price, let alone what's considered a fair price. So the issue that I have with this definition is not so much value for a fair price, but it's that adjective. And that adjective is going to change depending upon the customer, unless the company who is selling this product has such a reputation that people understand that they're going to get whatever that adjective in front of the value is for the price they want to pay, and they equal each other. If that makes sense to you, I hope it does. This particular slide just talks about, and I'm not going to go into it, things that we won't give up, internet service, etc. And in products expendable by spending cuts, this means they won't customers won't pay for those other additional things. And again, that's not something I'm going to spend a lot of time discussing. All right. Distributed product development. This is really, if you want to look at that definition that is up on the slide, this is another way of saying outsourcing in a different manner. Various parts of your innovation to other sources, and often, again, overseas. And notice what's down here at the next. As we, and I'm using a collective term here, as we hand this off, as outsourcing, if you will, we run into a lot of problems because we are now separated by these things down here at the bottom, cultural, geographic, and legal boundaries that cause us some problems. And we find out on an everyday basis when we call up and ask for help with a product we're having difficulty with, and we wind up talking to somebody halfway around the world that not only does not speak our native tongue, doesn't speak it well, and has trouble understanding what we're saying. Now, I'll give you what I consider to be the best example for that. And that is, we speak to a lot of people in Pakistan or India. And those folks, and by the way, when I say this, I'm not denigrating anybody. I'm just trying to state what happens. We speak to people who have learned to speak our language from the English. We're not English. We're Americans. And our language is different than English. We speak it differently. We inflect it differently. We mean different things when we say those. And so not only is it a divide, but it's a divide between how people learned the language, how they speak it, how they translate it, how they interpret it. Really very difficult. And that's what gets into this cultural business. And it makes things very, 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 very difficult. Total product offer, there's not much to be said here other than what's on the slide, and that is everything that a customer is going to evaluate when he or she is making a buying decision. And we have to be attuned to those differences. I'm talking about now marketer, pardon me. And we need to think like the customers, talk like the customers, act like the customers. And it behooves us to find out what the customers think, which takes us back to what we were talking about in some manner in chapter 13. This is just a slide that talks about, tells you that product innovation happens quite frequently happens during depressed times. It talks about different types of things that were developed for product that you would think that people in the Depression wouldn't have had a use for. Obviously, they did. Products replacing products. I'm not going to go into this too much. It's just a lot different than talking to us about things that are different. This is going back to the total product offer. You can see this slide graphically displayed in your text, page 383 on page 14 point, excuse me, figure 14.1, page 393. Now, we're going to talk here a little bit in the next few minutes about the differentiation between product line, product mixes, and things of that nature. A product line is a line of products that are similar in some circumstances, but yet they're different. And they are really intended for a similar market, even though that market may have some differentiation in it. Now, what they show here is Coca-Cola and its various differences in Coke, Diet Coke, Coke Zero, Cherry Coke, etc. Even though each of these is different, it's going to the same general market, and that is the people that drink caffeinated soda, caffeinated soft drinks. Although Diet Coke and Coke Zero wouldn't be in it. So maybe I shouldn't have used the word caffeinated. I should have just said people who drink sodas or soft drinks. That's a product line. A product mix, on the other hand, is something much different. And notice there they talk about the consumer giant Procter & Gamble, which has its home office here in Cincinnati. And these are notice a different number of products, or different types of products, or different kinds of products. But in general, they are to the same market. Most of us who pay attention to our hygiene use toothpaste and soap, etc. Now, we may not use batteries for hygiene, probably don't unless we have an electric toothbrush, like my wife does. But there are other things there that are commonality that means that we're into the same general market, that these are just a mix of products that are made by the same manufacturer. Now we're going to go from that's sealing the deal. I'm not going to spend any time on that. Now this is something that marketers really pay a lot of attention to, and that is product differentiation. This is a difficult thing. I would submit to you, and I'm sure you would agree, that aspirin is aspirin is aspirin. The same is true with bottled water. Now, the major difference in bottled water, as far as I'm concerned, is whether it's carbonated or not carbonated. If you go to Europe, they are countries that have European backgrounds much more than we do. They'll say that not carbonated, but it's water with gas or without gas. How do you differentiate those? Well, some do by price, some do by packaging, some do by saying, we get our water from Pure Mountain Springs or from artesian wells or something of that nature. Of course, Pepsi-Cola got caught a few years ago with its bottled water product. It said it was PSW, public water source. When people found out public water source, Pepsi took a really big black eye from that. So this is something that people really have to make a deal of. When I used to teach this class in a face-to-face setting, I would always ask students at this time, what is one product that you won't substitute something for, even though it may be the same as another product. And I always got an interesting mix of things. And I talk about what I don't want to substitute, even though there are other substitutes on the market that are just as good. I have certain preferences. You have certain preferences. We all do. And once we find something we like, it's a product we use fairly frequently, we tend not to change. So that's what they do. And notice it talks about using a mix of pricing and advertising, etc. It's very difficult. Now we're going to talk about 4 classes of goods and services. And the first we're going to come to is convenience goods and services. I mentioned some of this not too long ago. And these are things that you can find virtually any place you go. You can find milk at a convenience store. You can find milk at a department store. I won't say that, excuse me. You can find milk at the supermarket. You can find milk at a carryout. A number of other places you can find milk. And there's really not much differentiation for this. And nobody's looking for differentiation. They just want this to be where they can find it, hence convenient. The next classification are what are called shopping goods and services. And the issue here is that the customer will not make a purchase until after he or she has done some comparison shopping. And notice they're looking here for value and quality and price, etc. And these are the things that fall into this category: clothes and shoes, appliances, furniture, home remodeling, etc. I don't know how much home remodeling you've ever done in your life, but we've done some, and some, of course, you have to do, like putting on a new roof. They only last a certain amount of time. Normally speaking, most people will get an estimate or two estimates before they decide, maybe even ask for references from the contractor, etc. So keep that in mind. That's comparison. And it compares for a number of things. Now, the next items we come to are specialty goods and services. And notice what's listed here. Tiffany jewelry, Rolex watches, etc. Notice that there is a unique characteristic with these goods, and people identify with them. Now, we're not talking about the people that sell a Rolex for $50 2 blocks off of Times Square in New York, but we have some idea of that. And then the last item category are unsought goods and services. And these are things like car towing services, funeral services, renter's insurance, things of that nature. And customers in this particular case know of these services, but they don't think of them or these goods until they actually need them. So it's not like those other three categories. These are things we know about them. We don't, maybe in some cases we don't like to think about them. This is just a slide that says, okay, here are these various categories, these various goods. Where would they fit? I'm not going to spend a lot of time on that because it doesn't take much to tell us where to find them. This is just another one of these gee-whiz slides, I like to call them, things that were successful: pet rocks, garbage pail kids, mood rings, and then Chia pets. And there are other ones probably that you don't think of, you can think of just as well. Now, industrial goods and services. This brings us back to this business-to-business category, if you will, in some fashion. And notice that these products are normally used or can be used in the production of other products, not always, but the production of other products, and then sold to the business-to-business market. Notice here we talk about installations, capital items, accessory equipment, supplies, and services. Now I'm going to bring this one down. So we still can't see it. Categories. This is categories of industrial goods and services, and this just gives you some graphic, if you will, or wordy, in a way, wordy explanation of the slide we just talked about. We are now going to come to what is very interesting, I think, and we don't think about that a whole lot, and that is the use of packaging. We use packaging to improve the product in some fashion, and then to make it attractive. But we're going to talk about the functional uses of packaging in the next slide, which we don't always think about. And the first one is to get our attention. Some colors will get our attention a lot quicker than other colors. We want to be able to protect what's inside, but at the same time, we want it to be easy to open. Although I would question whether packages are really easy to open, because we're also in the era where we want them to be tamper-proof. A package is going to give us some information about the product. It may or may not. I know what this says here, but it may or may not tell us the benefits. And even if it does tell us the benefits, it may be in such a subtle way we don't think about it in that fashion. I was thinking of chewing gum. I do chew gum. I used to chew gum a lot more frequently than I do today, not for any particular reason. And the brand that I have used for a number of years that I like and prefer, I think it talks about freshening your breath. But I never chewed it for that particular reason. I would tell you that I probably did on occasion chew gum if I was going to meet somebody and I wanted to get some, maybe I had lunch with onions or something, I wanted to get that out of my mouth, although I don't know that a stick of gum is going to do that. But I probably never paid much attention. It probably does say it. I'm going to have to look again to see if it still says that. It's going to give us some information about a warranty, if there is such a thing, and a warning, and then give us some kind of idea of the price, the value, how much we're paying, and what we're going to get out of that, and in some cases, how to use it. Bundling is simply grouping two or more products together and then pricing them as a unit. There's a thing here, Virgin Airlines bundles door-to-door limousine service with some other things that doesn't charge you extra for that. Financial institutions bundle advice with purchases. Yeah, they do, and we can think about whether that's actually a benefit or not. Now, this next item and the next few items are going to talk about branding. Now, a brand is a name, symbol, or design that identifies and, in some cases, distinguishes a product from competitors' offerings. The graphic here is with Heinz ketchup, and then the next thing that comes with that, and we sometimes get these two confused, brand and trademark. A trademark is something that is registered with the government, and a company has exclusive use of and legal protection, by the way. I should point that out, for both the brand name then, and the design. Coca-Cola has that. Pepsi-Cola, I'm sure, does. I don't know that as well as I know Coca-Cola. And there are other ones, and we have to pay attention to these. And there's been some trademark infringement rights. There was I think you're probably aware of Victoria's Secret. There was a company, I guess still is a company in Louisville, Kentucky, doing business as Victor's Little Secret. And Victoria's Secret said, wait a minute, we have a trademark here, and you're infringing upon our trademark. And they went to court and were successful in getting Victor, whoever Victor was or is, to make some change in either the name or the marketing or both. Yeah, this just gives you some idea of using names and whether you're using the right name or not. This gives us the name game, why some things are called what they are. Oreo, for instance, the bookending O's mirror the shape of the cookie. I would not have thought about that, but I think that's interesting. Manufacturers' brands. These are brand names of manufacturers that distribute products nationally. Now, dealer and private label brands are different. They carry the retailer's name or perhaps a distributor's name, even though they may be the same as the manufacturer's brand. And then, of course, then we have generic goods, non-branded, and are sold at discount prices compared to either the dealer brand or the manufacturer's brand. And then knockoff brands are illegal. We don't need to go any further than that. Establishing brand equity and brand loyalty. Now, brand loyalty simply means, I'll take that one last, or first, I mean. Brand loyalty simply means the propensity of customers to continue to use the same brand. And they are committed to that. Brand loyalty is supposedly slipping today. Brand equity, on the other hand, and it's very important that we get this in our mind, the value of the brand name and its associated symbols. So this is simply what's the brand worth, as opposed to brand loyalty. I'm not sure why they put both of these on the same slide, because they are different. And this just gives you an idea of brand in value in millions of dollars. And some of that may be slipping, some of it may not be. These are some automobile symbols, and the reason they're used, again, it's not something I'm going to spend a lot of time on. Brand awareness is simply how quickly or easily somebody recognizes a brand when somebody mentions a product category. Now, a lot of companies don't like the fact that their product is associated across the board. There are many facial tissues, but a lot of people will say, give me a Kleenex. There are many cellophane adhesive tapes, but a lot of people say, give me the Scotch tape, which is made by 3M, mining and manufacturing company. So a lot of companies don't like that, but we tend to associate with that. Maybe not as much as we did, but we used to. That talks here about customers having a brand preference when they ask for one brand over another. And then brand insistence is, I will not accept a substitution. Brand association, linking brands together, favorable image. Brand manager is a person that manages the product all the way through in the marketing mix, etc. These are brands and where they're made that are very, very familiar to Americans, and not one of these is an American company. Product screening, firms working to focus on the most promising, and then analysis is exactly what it says. This next is the new product development process, and it goes through various steps. We have an idea, then the product is screened usually by somebody in management, a management team, to decide if it's something that's viable. Then when that's done, there's an analysis done of it. It's developed. It's tested. Testing could be test marketing, and then it comes to the market. Of course, that is oversimplified because that doesn't always happen. This is the way we bring products to market. I don't know that we need to pay a lot of attention to that slide. Concept testing is exactly what it says. We're going to find out if it works. We may do this with a focus group or focus groups. And then obviously commercialization is bringing the product to market and doing the things we need to do to get people to buy it. This is the product life cycle. There are 4: introduction, growth, maturity, and decline. And you can see this graphically displayed in your text figure 14.4 at the top of page 485. And gives you some idea here of where we're going. I would tell you that all electric cars are probably moving into the growth area, whereas hybrid cars are probably moving into the mature area. Now, we know there's some differences. This is just my feeling. I may not be right, but certainly that's something that I think is happening today, because we're seeing more hybrid cars, and we're beginning to see more all-electric cars, and we'll continue to see more of them as we move along. This is the product life cycle and marketing mix. You can see this displayed figure 14.6 on page 406 and give you some kind of idea. And I'm not going to go through this because it's a little wordy, but it gives you an idea of how the product life cycles move. And then this one, product life cycle stages in sales, profit, and competition. This is important because introduction, you probably have low sales. Growth, you're going to have sales that are going up pretty quickly. Now, the one thing here I've always disagreed with in this is maturity. And it talks about declining profits. And I would tell you that Procter & Gamble, while it may be having some difficulties today, would tell you that they're still making as much money off of Tide as they've ever made. Tide's been around for many years. It's still #1 seller. Now, today, Procter & Gamble's profit might be a little bit lower because they sell a lot of product overseas and the dollar is strong. So they're losing some money there. But I would tell you that maturity does not always equate to declining profits. And then, of course, decline is exactly what it says, and you're not going to be around much longer after decline starts. Pricing and objectives. We have to make a return on both the investment and hopefully get a profit. We need to build traffic, foot traffic or internet traffic, whatever it happens to be. Increase market share. Have some kind of an image that people can identify with in the product, and then further social objectives, both long and short term. So there are various types of strategies that we can use when it comes to pricing products. Cost based, we have target costing. Competition based, that means we're going to figure out what the competition is selling for, and we're going to either meet that or maybe exceed a little bit or maybe be below a little bit. If we exceed it, we're going to say, hey, we're different, we're costing you more money, but we have a better product. And we have break-even analysis. You're not going to stay in business too long if you're just going to do break-even. We have total fixed costs, which go into this. That's everything is going to cost us whether we open the door or not. We still have to pay rent, we still have to pay utilities, et cetera, et cetera. Variable costs, those are going to change according to the level of our production. This is a calculation on how to find a break-even point. Not something that you need to worry about, but if you want to think about it, the break-even point equals the fixed cost divided by the price of one unit minus the variable costs. So notice it says if you have fixed costs of $200,000, a variable cost of $2 per item, and you sell your product for $4 each, what would be your break-even cost? I'm not going to get into that. I'd have to stop and think about it. Probably should never have brought it up. These are pricing strategies. New products, people use a skimming price strategy because what you're going to do there is you're going to get make as much as you possibly can before you have competition. Penetration, obviously what this is, you want to get into the market, you're probably going to set your price lower than what your competitors are. Danger. You can't raise your price. So you have to make sure that what you're doing is correct. Everyday low prices, we know that there's some businesses like Walmart that say they have everyday low prices. Notice that they do that and then there's no special sales. Then you have other ones for the retailers will do pricing strategies of retailers, high-low. Notice here regular prices that are higher than everyday low prices, except during special sales when they're lower. And then psychological pricing is just something that's designed to get customers to come in. We're almost at the close, and we'll use a story that my wife's mother told years ago. She was in the store, and I'm going to bump the price up so it's close to the day, that somebody wanted to buy canned tomatoes, and they were on sale at the store for three for $1. And somebody said, "Oh, you ought to go down to so-and-so's place because they got them on sale down there, 34 cents a can." And so without thinking, this other woman put 3 for $1 down and went down the street or wherever it was to buy 34 cents a can. Psychological pricing. That brings us to the end of chapter 14, and we'll get into chapter 15 shortly. It's 5:54, so let's take a break till 5:57. Do you have any questions? All right.
No, sir, no questions.
Okay. Well, we'll be back to chapter 15 shortly, 5:57. About 3 minutes.
All right, then.
All right, 557. And we're now going to talk about Chapter 15, Distributing Products. Pardon me. And our learning objectives for this chapter explain the concept of marketing channels and their value, demonstrate how intermediaries perform the 6 marketing utilities, identify the types of wholesale intermediaries in the distribution system, compare the distribution strategies that retailers use, explain the various kinds of non-store retailing, explain the various ways to build cooperation and channel systems, and finally describe logistics and outline how intermediaries manage the transportation and storage of goods. What are marketing intermediaries? They are companies, if you will, organizations that assist moving goods and services, although mostly goods, from business to business in the B2B market and from businesses to consumers in the B2C market. They're called intermediaries because they are in the middle of the process. A channel of distribution is a group of marketing intermediaries that band together to do a number of things, to transport and store goods from producers to consumers or producers to other businesses. These are the various types of intermediaries we have. We have agents and brokers, wholesalers, and retailers. Now, agents and brokers bring buyer and seller together to facilitate a transaction, but they do not take possession or title to the goods. Better to use the word title than possession. A wholesaler is an intermediary who sells to other organizations, sometimes to the end user, but not very often. And they also sell to people that are mentioned there, retailers, hospitals, institutions, etc. And again, a wholesaler may be selling to a business who will use that product in the manufacture of a different product or used for their own use. The retailer sells to the end user. That's us. They use a different term there than I do. I like to use the term end user because for the most part, we're going to go to a retailer, we're going to make a purchase, but we're not going to take what we purchased and go out and sell that to somebody else. This is a very busy slide to look at, but you can see this displayed much better in your text on 2 pages, page 420 and 421. Pardon me, figure 15.1 and 15.2. Pardon me, this selected channel of distribution. And you can look through that slide and see how product is moved from one place to another. Now, this particular slide really comes before this slide and shouldn't. Now, let's look at this slide. If, in fact, the manufacturer wanted to do the selling, him or herself, look at how many different places they would have to do it. Figure 15.2, how many different ways they would have to take care of that themselves. And of course, most of us are not going to drive to the Goodyear manufacturing plant to buy tires, if in fact that plant is still in the United States. I don't know that it is, don't know that it's not. Look, however, if they sell their product to a wholesaler, how that wholesaler is going to interact with all the rest of these people and take that distribution monkey, logistics monkey, off the back of the manufacturer. Now let's go back to this slide that should have come after the one I just showed you, at least in my estimation. This is the things that intermediaries can do for the manufacturer. They can do tasks a lot quicker. They can do them less expensively. And they can see the customers quickly. Notice what they also do. They reduce transactions and contacts. Now, somebody is always going to say, why do we have to have an intermediary? Drives up the cost. Well, that may be true, but notice what it says here. We can get rid of those folks, but we can't get rid of what they do. Again, going back to the previous slide, they can perform tasks quicker and less expensively than many organizations can, and most organizations can. And yes, they add costs, but they also generally add some kind of value. And that value many times is service, many times is repair, many times is other type things that the manufacturer simply cannot do. Now, yeah, we know that there are things that are done. Dell computers normally sold direct, and you know that kind of drove IBM out of the PC business, and a few other things. Apple did a lot of that themselves, but they all have stores now. Those stores, we can't consider those stores to be intermediaries, but those stores are performing some of the functions that intermediaries do. Excuse me. This is a gee whiz slide, but you can see it in the text, the figure 15.3 at the bottom of page 422. This is where the distribution's effect on your dollar, on your food dollar. It just shows the breakout. Now, this is what intermediaries do. They create utility, and they do this by a number of ways. The utility that they present. By the way, I'm not going to be able to move that slide down, so I'll tell you what that sixth. I don't think I can. Oh yeah, I can too. Okay, there it goes. Didn't think I could. So the utilities that the intermediaries perform are actually, in some cases, add value to the product: form, time, place, possession, information, and service. Now we're going to look at each of these. Farm utility and time utility on this particular slide. Change raw material useful products. Time, and make products available when customers want them. Can you imagine calling up a manufacturer at 11:30 p.m. and saying, I need to come over to your place and get a bottle of aspirin and some cough syrup because my child has the cold? You can go to Walgreens or CVS or some other pharmacy like that. There's an intermediary selling those products for the manufacturer and get them when you want them, assuming they're open 24 hours a day, and a lot of those are. Place utility and possession utility. Place utility just means it's where you want it when you need it. And possession utility, notice, is transferring ownership from one party to another, and in some cases providing credit. Information utility. I would like to think of this as communication more necessarily than information, because notice it opens a two-way flow. And then service utility, somebody's going to come to your place, your residence or your business, and provide some type of service to you after the sale, whatever that service happens to be. As is noticed here on the slide, it could be, what's the best way to use this product? Now, wholesale intermediaries, notice they normally make business-to-business sales. However, you have stores like Staples and Costco that also have a retail function. You can go into Staples. I don't belong to Costco, so I can't talk about them. You can go into Staples and get copies made and things of that nature. At the same time, Staples may provide some functions to a business and copying and things of that nature. So they will have a retail sale and they'll have a wholesale sale. And notice that down at the bottom, we know much more about retailers than we know about wholesalers, simply because we do more business with them. Now, there's two types of wholesale intermediaries. Are merchant wholesalers. These are firms that are independently owned. And when they bring goods, when goods come in from the manufacturer, they take title to them, they buy them. So while it is still manufacturer X's product, it is now going to be sold by this merchant wholesaler. And within the merchant wholesalers, there are two types: full service and limited function. Full service, this is exactly what it means. They do everything. They do some marketing, they do selling, they do follow-up, they do service, they do all those sorts of things. The limited function people, however, only do a certain type in the distribution process. They're only going to do certain functions in the distribution process. They don't do everything. I have to tell you that my experience is with full service wholesalers, not with limited, although I could have run into a limited and didn't know it. Now, here's some other wholesalers that we don't think about, but they're around. These three on here: rack jobbers, cash and carry wholesalers, and drop shippers. Notice what a rack jobber does. He or she provides a merchandise on racks or shelves, and they're displayed and they're sold on consignment. So in other words, whatever store, I'm going to use that term, that a rack jobber puts his or her racks and shelves in, the store doesn't pay anything until there's a purchase. Cash and carry, notice here what this is exactly what it says. We don't see too many of these today as we used to some years ago. That's exactly what it says. These type of wholesalers normally do business with small retailers, and you come in and you say, this is what I want to purchase, and you pay the money and you carry it out. I notice that limited assortment of products. A drop shipper takes the order from a retailer and then drops it where the customer wants it. Now, we talked about agents and brokers early on, but we'll talk about them a little bit more here. Agent usually has, as the slide says, a long-term relationship specifically with the clients that they represent. Could be with buyers as well too. And they many times represent more than one manufacturer in a given area. And a sales agent, a little bit different. And by the way, I didn't give the preface right. A manufacturer's agent, as opposed to a sales agent. Sales agent usually only represents one customer or one client, if that's a better term for you, in a given area. A broker usually represents people on a temporary basis. So the best way, and remember that neither of these folks, neither an agent or a broker, takes title to the goods. So what you need to think of, just to differentiate these two, an agent usually has a long-term relationship and a broker does not. There's some gee whiz numbers here about retailers in the United States. There are over 2 million of them. And retailers employ about 5 million people. These are the fastest growing retail categories. I'm not going to spend any time on that. This is how retailers and anybody else really ought to clamp down on return policy fraud, return policy fraud. Make sure that you don't how to prevent return policy fraud is actually what the slide says. Require receipts, shred them so they can't be used, check for tampering, have customers fill out a return receipt. These are the types of retail stores. Just give you some categories here. Department stores, we're talking here about places like Sears and JCPenney, Macy's, discount stores, Walmart, Target, supermarkets, Kroger, Albertsons, warehouse club, convenience stores, category killers, outlet stores, and then finally specialty stores. And I'm not going to go over that list with you any more extensively than what we already have. These are the type of retail distribution strategies. There are several of them here that we want to talk about. Intensive, selective, and exclusive. Intensive. Now this is, by the way, this is the manufacturer or a wholesaler putting product in a retail store for sale. Now notice we have intensive distribution, which means we're going to put whatever we're trying to sell as many places as possible. So we're going to saturate the market. Selective, we're only going to go certain places. And in other words, if we know we have people who will buy certain things in this area, we're going to put that product there. Preferred group of available retailers in an area. So we're going to go to where we're going to do business best. So if we sell our product to Sears and Macy's and JCPenney, etc., because we're trying to do some differentiation of product and customer, we may select only one of those three. We may use two of those three, but we won't use all three of them. And exclusive is exactly what it says. There will only be one retail outlet in a given area that will handle our product. Now, if we're talking about a fairly large geographic area, that may mean however many stores that retailer has. If we're not in that large of an area, then it may be just a single store. Now we have a thing that's come along today, probably a little bit more so than what we've seen in the past, and that is non-store retailing. Now we have electronic retailing. We know what that is. Telemarketing, we know what that is. And then we have things like vending machines, etc. Those are things that we have that are non-store retailing that we are very familiar with. And then there's this other one called social commerce. This is also electronic commerce that involves using social media. So it's a double whammy if you want to talk about it in that fashion. These are important features for online e-commerce websites, what they need. And I don't think there's anything here that's really something that's out of the ordinary. But established brands, user reviews, a good site to look at, professionally designed, as it says here, and different ways to pay. This is forms of non-store retailing. Direct selling, pretty easy. And direct marketing. This one's a little bit different. So I'm going to make sure that we get this one in our mind. Any activity that directly links manufacturers or intermediaries with ultimate customers. Ultimate customers, end user. These are the 4 systems of channel relationships. Corporate or company distribution system, and we'll talk about each of these. Contractual distribution system, administered distribution system, and supply chains. Corporate distribution system, Goodyear Tire is the one that comes to mind. Also, Sherwin-Williams paints. Sherwin-Williams, excuse me. The firm, Goodyear in this case, owns everything that goes on within this distribution system. They own the stores, etc. Everything in the channel of distribution. A contract distribution or contractual distribution system is where members, now think of these as franchises in some cases, and differences, in other words, but the first comes franchises. The franchisee is bound by the contract to do what the franchisor says. So franchise system, do we have that up there? Wholesale sponsored chains, Independent Grocers Association, and then Ace Hardware, and then retail cooperatives, Associated Grocers, whom I don't know, and True Value Hardware. So a little bit different here. Wholesale sponsored chains, Ace Hardware, I want to point out the 2 to you, and retail cooperatives, True Value. Administered distribution systems. Here is the producer, manufacturer, manages all the marketing functions at the retail level. And this is, here we have Kraft and Ralph Lauren. Then we move to supply chains, which are different. And a supply chain simply links all the activities of transporting goods from one place to another. Logistics may be a better word from that. All the activities they have to perform to move goods and services and raw materials to the end user. And supply chain management is simply all the things that the managers have to do to make sure that this system runs smoothly. And this is supply chain, the supply chain. You can see this in your text as well. I'll get to the right page here for you. Figure 15.7 at the top of page 433. Notice here the supply chain extends from the manufacturing plant, supplier's plant, all the way through to the consumers. Or the channel, well, supplier's plant, that they're the ones supplying our material. I'm sorry, I misread the slide. But then the channel of distribution is from the manufacturer to the consumer or to the business. These are some weak links in the what can go wrong. Natural disasters come along, and we're finding more and more of those today. Rising tides, increasing severity of storms, both the rain and snow, and things of that nature. That really causes lots of problems. It talked about the recent snowstorm that hit the Northeast last week or week before last, inundating Baltimore and Philadelphia and Washington, D.C. and New York City, etc. What the cost of the cleanup was going to be. I didn't see any calculation of what the cost was for goods that weren't delivered or for possible spoilage of food. That probably doesn't happen quite as much today since we have good refrigeration and a few other things, but there can be some problems in those areas. And those are things that have to be considered because that's going to cause problems as we go down the road. Logistics is simply planning and implementing and controlling of the flow of product from point A to point B. And notice here from points of origin to consumption. And most firms outsource this. They don't do their own. We have FedEx, we have United Parcel, and we have other companies, and we have a lot of local companies, to say nothing of long distance trucks and trains and things of that nature. We have inbound logistics. That is bringing in the raw material to the manufacturer. And then we have materials handling, which is the movement of goods in the warehouse, and then from the warehouse to the factory floor, and from the factory floor out to the workstations, and then eventually to the consumer. But that is part of outbound logistics, which takes the finished goods and products to the people in business who are going to buy them, or to the consumer. And the reverse logistics is exactly what it says. That's bringing things back. Now, these are the various methods of transportation. Notice we have rail, trucks, pipeline, etc. This is graphically displayed for you in the text, figure 15.8, top of page 436. We have logistics specialists who are known as freight forwarders in some areas, and put many small shipments together to create one large shipment. Intermodal shipping is exactly what it says, modes of transportation to complete a single long distance movement of freight. We have other intermodal shipping. We have piggybacking with truck trailers on trains, fishy backing, truck trailers on ships, and birdie backing, truck trailers placed on planes. And then we have storage warehouses. which is kind of the end part of logistics. A storage warehouse will hold a product for a long period of time, whereas a distribution warehouse is just a reverse, because they are used to gather and redistribute products, and it talks here about beer and soft drinks and packaging deliveries. Well, we've come to 627. We've finished chapters 13, 14, and 15. And the lecture question for this evening is why. I want to make sure I get this correctly. Why is packaging important? Now, I realize you can go to the textbook and see the 6 or 7 uses of packaging. I don't want you to tell me that. I want you to tell me why packaging is important. Place that in your own words. You can use the text. I appreciate that you're going to want to. But I want you to tell me why, in your estimation, packaging is important. So that's the lecture question for this week. I thank you for your time. If you're still on, Mr. Bilzeri, do you have any questions?
None at this time, but I will email if I do.
Okay, thank you. And thanks for attending.
Okay.
Look for you next week. Good night.